Okay, I'd like to call to order the North County Fire Authority board meeting for December 21st, 2021 at Nocfa Station 1 at 5051 Grand Hall Road, Holly, Michigan, 48442. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Bianca,
Here.
Ellis,
Yes.
Chad Snyder,
Here.
Stouffer,
Here.
Winchester,
Here.
Chief Lynch.
Here. The first item on the agenda is the agenda approval for today's meeting. Is there any input on that?
Motion to approve.
What are you approving?
The agenda.
The agenda. And supported to approve.
I'd like to add something to the agenda. Under unfinished business B, the Nocfa employee complaint letter dated 9/28/2021. I'd like to add sanctioning of the chief. After I requested a closed session, it was sent by email to the entire board for comments, conveying information pertaining to a board member in the Tri-County Times.
So you're asking to add an item C?
Or we can add
Between B and C?
it's under the same complaint, that was the complaint, but he states in the Tri-County Times comments, intimidating, unprofessional, and disrespectful about me. That was after I asked for a closed session.
Okay, we're not discussing the issue now, just what is the agenda item you're trying to add?
Sanctioning of the chief for conveying information pertaining to a board member.
And you're asking to add it after B.
Sure, and I don't know, I think the chief can request a closed session for that.
What exactly is it called? What are we at?
Conveying, sanctioning the chief for conveying information pertaining to a board member, that would be me, the Tri-County Times, after I requested a closed session. And the entire board was alerted of that.
So that would be, if that would be item C, and then item C would move on to item D. Is there any other?
Are we open for discussion?
We're open for discussion on the agenda.
My problem with putting that on the agenda is twofold. The public hasn't notified that something completely different. Secondly, we've not had an opportunity to look into that. We've not seen details. We don't have any of the material.
I have the newspaper pulled with me.
Well,
Is there an issue with adding it to the agenda, even though it wasn't on the published agenda?
I think so.
it's a new topic. I mean, it can be brought up.
It can be done, it just needs to be voted on. You need to
Well, then go ahead. We already know where it's at. Go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
do that.
Okay, are there any other changes or additions to the agenda?
Who are the movers and
I'll
seconders?
rescind my motion.
George had moved and Karen had seconded, and
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the changes.
is there a second for that? I will second that. Any further discussion on the agenda changes? Could we have a roll call, please, Pat?
Chad Snyder,
Yes.
Stouffer,
Yes.
Ellis,
No?
Winchester,
No,
Bianca,
Yes.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, consent agenda. All items listed on our consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial, do not require discussion by the Nocfa board, and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired on an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be automatically moved to the last item under new business. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would like to change the minutes, I make a correction to the minutes in public comment. On page 3, we talked last month about just giving the person's name and that they address the board. That was done on 2 of the 3. Under Mr. Coop, it says he expressed concerns for Nocfa. I believe the other 2 did as well, but it should just say Mr. Coop address the board.
Is there any,
I would move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
roll call, please?
Winchester,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Gamka,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Stover,
Yes. Okay, moving on, item 4 on the agenda, reports. Chief's report?
Report was in the packet for November, we had a total of 99 calls, 7 EMS related. We had a total of 33 calls in Rose Township. FYI for the board, we are as of today at 1,250 calls. Last year we did 1,100. Just to give you a where we're trending. Questions on the report?
I have none. Any questions?
Would like to add that the Firefighters Association went out to the boot drive in the beginning of December, raised some money, and they donated $3,000 to the Colorado Youth Assistance for their what they do with the gifts and stuff. And then also they purchased a bunch of $50 gift cards and gave them to the EMS responders who responded to the Oxford. We do have still ambulance out of service being worked on, and we have a taker that will be going out of service temporarily until that gets fixed tomorrow. That is all I have.
Okay. Rose Township.
I have nothing to add.
The Rose Township Board adopted a medical marijuana curator. It's adopted, has to be published within days and getting, coming to effect about the time that our moratorium runs out.
Okay.
I was gonna say nothing over here, but we did, apply for the opioid. Matt's not here. On the opioid settlement. Holly Township will be getting $7,321. And that can be used for, through the department for the narcotic purposes. And then it can also go to youth organizations for education and prevention of opioids.
Very good. Anything else from Holly? Citizen at large, nothing to report. We have no presentations. We move into item 6, unfinished business. Item 6A is an anonymous letter dated 9/7 and the public censure of board member. I have a question at this point because the anonymous letter is clearly aimed at a specific individual on the board, and she has requested that this be dealt with in a closed session.
And who is the board member that it's
Ms. Scheibsnyder.
Scheibsnyder? And she has requested that this be dealt with in a closed session. Under Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268A, exemption from open meetings to be in a closed session. It has to be to consider dismissal, suspension, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against, or to consider periodic public evaluation of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, if the individual requests a closed hearing. Are we going to go into closed session under this motion to hear a complaint or charge brought against Ms. Snyder.
The anonymous letter is in the form of a complaint.
If she's requesting it, then the board may go into closed session to consider that item. And I would remind the board that we should be taking minutes under the Open Meetings Act, even though it's closed.
Would you introduce yourself for?
My name is Gary Feidman, PLC, attorney for the board.
What was the last name?
Aflakin Frank, EALK.
My second portion of that question is, as we've made this agenda item, it also includes the censure of a board member under the same agenda item.
Well, I would take these separately. The first is to consider the complaint against a public officer, Ms. Snyder, who's requested a closed session. The second is the public censure. Again, this against a different board member, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, has this other board member, I believe it's Ms. Winchester, have you requested a closed session?
No.
In that instance, I don't think that we can go into closed session. I think we need to discuss that on the public record.
Can I bifurcate this agenda item into two items so we can go into closed session for one portion? And
I think that that's advisable.
so we're going to do that. So under MCL 15.268, with the complaint brought against a public official, I move that we move this to a closed session.
Who is support?
I do.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
That letter is public knowledge. That letter is public knowledge. So, you know,
The letter is public now.
just.
All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
The motion passes for us to go into closed session. Chief, what do we have for facilities?
Would my personnel please escort everybody out to the bay? We have seating and tables out in the bay.
And we're staying in here then?
And yes, I'm sorry, yes, we're staying here and ask everybody to refrain from coming back into the office section of the building until we come back in.
Motion to go back into open?
Support.
All those in favor? Aye. And all those opposed? Okay,
So the.
Pretty forward.
Oh, just a second.
on agenda items,
Stop.
Who moved in the second?
Diane moved to open, Karen second.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 6A, item 1, we split it in half. There's no action to be taken. Agenda item 6A2, we have the public censure of a board member. Any discussion?
Is this one we have to go into closed session?
We can.
Oh,
With regard to closed session, the only exemption that I could see might apply is the same one to consider dismissal, suspension, disciplining, or to hear complaints brought against a public officer. But it would have to be at the request of the public officer. So it's the person who is the subject of this censure requesting to go into a closed session.
So my question,
She is not.
She is not,
I am not.
then I think this is a matter for an open session.
okay,
And the fact that we've had attorney to attorney conversations about it doesn't change that?
The fact that I've spoken with Ms. Winchester's attorney, is that what you're talking about? No, I mean, Message that I got from Ms. Winchester's attorney was that she wasn't willing to go into a closed session.
Okay,
Okay, so at this point,
floor is yours.
if I may,
Yep.
at this point, what we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, what we have is a letter threatening a lawsuit if we don't take action,
Who don't vacate the censure.
which is taking action.
Mhm.
But at this point, if the board's not in favor, and I say the board because it has to go, but we've already had that,
Have a vote, that's one.
we, and the board chose not to take action. So my question to you is what's left to discuss? Until a lawsuit.
Well, there's, obviously if there's a lawsuit, then you should go into closed session and discuss the pending litigation. If you would like to attempt to resolve it prior to the lawsuit, I guess, consider, changing the censure if you wanted to. That, that's could be a discussion point with Ms. Winchester. I can't be involved in talking to Ms. Winchester since she's represented by counsel, but the board could certainly discuss it among themselves as to what a reasonable solution might be for her based on her complaint about the censure.
So we had a public censure, done, and the request is that the censure is not justified and that it's being asked to be rescinded in an apology.
Yes.
That's where we're at,
That's it.
that's correct?
Yeah.
So the
And it's
decision
probably-
needs to be made, are you gonna rescind it, or are you gonna apologize?
Or is there a middle ground?
Or, right,
The middle ground. There could be.
Okay, and at this point, we had a motion on that very topic. And a vote that went 3-2.
They went to,
You wouldn't let me vote.
no,
Oh,
I didn't vote, I abstained.
Oh, that's right.
oh, okay.
So in the
So
first.
it did not pass.
Correct.
So from 2-2, it didn't pass. That was what I was trying to get. It didn't pass.
I'm gonna make a motion to rescind the censure.
Pardon?
I'm making a motion to rescind the censure.
Is there a second?
Did you not hear me?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I made a motion.
I made a motion to rescind the censure.
Oh, then I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to rescind the censure
Of who?
of Ms. Winchester.
I can add that to the motion.
Thank you.
It was voted on in the October meeting. Just for clarity, this is not a motion to adopt the motion from the last meeting, from the November meeting. This is merely a motion to rescind the censure.
And an apology.
And one question for you. Again, this is a legal question. but I don't know. The fact that there's already a motion on the board that said no, we can go ahead and revisit it and do it over?
I think so.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
You are able to revote on things if they're on the agenda and given notice to the.
Well, I just wanted to, I mean, it kind of sets a precedent that we'll just keep throwing against the wall till we get what we want, but I just want to clarify. So I'm good.
The other piece of that is to make a motion to overturn a motion that has to come from a member of the board that voted for it in the first place.
And that was me.
That meets those requirements. Did we get a second? We did get a second.
Yeah, that's the new colors.
Is there any discussion? I have a question for you, Karen. If we pass this motion without the requested apology, will that change it?
I'm not able to answer that at this point, but I don't know why you wouldn't apologize for accusing me of a federal crime I didn't commit. That's serious. And I believe I am owed an apology.
I would ask one question. when that censure was brought forward, you had filed a complaint with the U.S. Postal Service.
Correct.
Well,
Mr. Stern.
we asked, well, it's my understanding, I know, okay, two parts. At the time we asked for complaint number or reference to that, you never supplied that. I do know that you went to the post office because I went to them to find out, but they referred you up the ladder, so to speak. Whatever happened to that complaint that you filed, was it ever investigated? Is there a number on that? We've never heard anything on that that would support the censure that you brought forward.
So there were two complaints. The first one was passed off to the Holly Township or the Holly Village Post Office because they interpreted it as a complaint about delivery of mail. I spoke with the postmaster subsequent to that, and she said, when this has been handled appropriately, go back to the, I forget the name of the investigative group of the post office. Back in the back out of the case.
And what's happening with that?
It's still an open investigation.
Oh, and are we allowed to have that investigation number, case number that you just referred to?
I don't see any of the sheriff.
Okay. So that's where we're at. We have a supposed, and it's supposed until we,
But I also provided the board proof that what he accused me of, whether he filed it or not, they're not gonna go anywhere with it because I showed the board their manual on the address, how they consider the mail being addressed.
my point in asking those questions was, at this point, the censure is purely accusation by Mr. Stauffer. In order to back up that, because he mentions felonies and a crime, you would either have to have somebody prosecuting those said crimes, or at least you would have a report from the Postal Service that says these are crimes, these are violations, at which point that would be then taken to the prosecutor and picked up. At this point, months later, we've heard nothing about it other than there's a claim that's been filed. So I just wanted to clarify what we were looking at here.
Is there any other commentary? Okay, could we take a roll call, please?
Jack Slater,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes?
Bianca,
No.
Stouffer,
No.
Winchester,
Yes.
That's great. Moved and seconded to rescind the censure of Ms. Winchester.
For me?
It's been moved, seconded, and motion approved to rescind
Yeah, there
the
you go.
censure.
I thought you were going to
Ms.
do it
Winchester.
over again.
No. Is there any other discussion on the public censure agenda item? Okay, moving on to the next agenda item is a Nocfa employee complaint letter, dated 9/28/2021. The employee that's, the complaint letter is targeting has requested a closed session. Are we allowed to do that?
So under MCL 15.268A, we're going into closed session to consider dismissal, suspension, disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, yet then, and the public officer is requesting the closed session, then yes, we can go into closed session.
So it appears that we meet those requirements. So under MCL 15.26A with a complaint filed against the public official requesting a closed session, I move that we move to closed session.
Support.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. We need to vacate the room again.
Session. Support.
Was entertaining one.
I'll make
The motion. So,
Support.
okay. All in favor?
Okay, sort that out.
Moved.
I make the motion.
Support.
Diane,
Thank
he
you.
was just being entertained.
That's right. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes?
Make a motion to have an investigation for discussion.
Support.
All in favor? Let's do a roll call.
Tell us the motion, please.
I didn't hear what you said, Ed.
She couldn't hear you.
Restate the motion.
Oh, my motion is to have an investigation for discussion in closed.
Have an investigation
Per discussion from the closed session.
for discussion.
Okay.
And then I was the support.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Judge Snyder,
Yes.
Collis,
Yes.
Winchester.
Yes.
Stouffer.
Yes.
Gamka.
Yes.
Moving on to the next order of business, we have a new item C, which was the sanctioning of the chief for conveying confidential information.
Should we, wait
No.
to talk, wait for that? Because, postpone it?
Oh, I see.
Postpone it?
Sorry.
Oh, no. Postpone it to a different meeting, because, I mean, it has to do with this, letter.
What are you saying? You want to table
Postpone,
or
yes.
postpone?
Yes, I make a motion to postpone until we get the results of the investigation.
I second that. Any discussion?
You seconded it?
I seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call?
Judge Snyder,
Yes.
Stouffer,
Yes.
Winchester,
Yes.
Gamka,
Yeah.
Collis.
Yes. Okay, it's moved and seconded and then approved by unanimous vote to postpone, indefinitely postpone. We haven't set a date. Next item of business is item D, board member access to the department incident notification system. We had questions in the last meeting about the exact legality of having someone on the board getting the messages. And we're hoping that we could get a clarification from you today as to the legal aspect. We have two different documents from one of your attorneys, one stating that it didn't appear that we should be doing that under various rules, and then a separate form that said for the purposes of things like budgeting and things like that, it appears to be okay. So we're looking for some clarification.
So let me pull out, and this was already disclosed in a open session, correct?
Yes.
So we're not waiving any attorney client privilege that hasn't already been waived. Sure. Keep it going.
Mr. Stern, I've asked you not to look at attorney-client
I was not
documents
looking
that
at
the
any of
lawyer
that.
is going through.
I am not looking at his stuff.
I would ask you to not do that.
Well, that's a waste of your time because I wasn't looking at anything. You're just trying to stir up stuff.
Thank you for your
You're trying to
cooperation.
stir stuff up. You're a troublemaker and a bully.
Peter, if I remember right, you were questioning why the letter, legal opinion said, no, we shouldn't be doing that, but
Right.
why did he give us a form to allow it to happen?
So
Yeah, and on
if you
the
read,
board,
if you're talking about the October 28, 2021 email from Alex Burridge that I was copied on, it was already disclosed. it is discussing whether, standards for whether or not a board member might be able to look at HIPAA-protected information. And it provides a framework for assessing that and doesn't come to any conclusions as to whether a particular board member would be able to access this notification system that has HIPAA-protected information. Rather, it's giving you a framework for analyzing it. And then based on your analysis, it's providing a confirmation of receipt of the confidentiality policy and dissemination of patient information, so that if somebody is able to access the information, that they understand their responsibilities. So I think you've got to go back as the board and analyze, what are the basis for saying that the board member could have access to it. And that's laid out. And this is basically just copying from the HIPAA standards, where it starts at what treatment, payment, and healthcare, what are treatment, payment, and healthcare operations. So if it's related to that, and it goes on to give a lot of examples, then access is okay. But we're recommending that anyone who has access sign off on this confidentiality so that they know what their responsibilities are.
But the list of allowed reasons for having access on the form is very different than in the original letter. The form, it says that acceptable uses of PHI within Nocfa include, but are not limited to, peer reviews, journal audit, quality assurance, business planning and development, and budgeting. That's a very different list than the letter.
What letter?
The first letter from Al.
The first letter from that.
No, the letter, I think he's referring to the letter of the options that you were just discussing.
Yeah.
At the end of Alex's email, there's the healthcare operations with certain administrative, financial, legal, and quality improvement activities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 different options that he's asking if the board feels that a board member falls under any of these, then you may decide to give that person.
Are you talking about?
Email dated Thursday, October 28th.
Yeah.
From Matt.
At the end of it, it's a confirmation of receipt of policy, confidentiality, and dissemination of patient information.
That's the one that speaks about business planning, development, and budgeting. That form.
Business planning.
It's on the
Oh,
form.
yeah, acceptable uses or peer review. That's just that's more of a general, I'm not sure why that's in that form, but that's acceptable use.
I have a question.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah, go ahead.
So I've had this for 5 years. I haven't had any issues with receiving this. I was recently removed from it, and I do monitor response time and things like that. And I know there's other alerts that go out that I don't get. So some are like training. You have, training alerts and things like that. Am I correct? That I don't necessarily get because you can limit what people get. Is that correct?
No, we have another software subscription called Active 911 that gives out exactly what it actually is a link to the incident notification system, but we can also use it to do our own personal interdepartment messages.
Okay. Because I was wondering if you could separate and remove the medical part.
Not through
Because
that.
I do use the tree down and the layers down and to manage the township, and I have for the last 5 years. Okay.
The way I'm looking at
Because
this,
it's not always just medicals, it's, multiple things.
the way I'm looking at this, this was a simplification of these other, the longer list.
Mhm.
And we can go back and take another look at it and see if we should adjust that form. But that's how I'm reading this, as a simplification.
So just the history here, Ms. Schneider was taken off of this. She asked to be put back on. There was a number of correspondences went back and forth. She was then put back on, per instruction from the board. The board voted to put her back on. We got some further information here where we tried to ascertain whether that was okay or not. We took her back off at the last board meeting, or you had already done it, but we approved taking her
I
back
asked to
off.
be removed.
And so we're sitting at a point right now where we need a decision as to whether it's legal for us to put a board member on the system or not. Because the intent of the board for our last vote was to do that. And we don't wanna break the law, the HIPAA law. So we need a very clear delineation of, for the purposes of being a board member and the way we made the motion, and or township supervisor
By request.
by request. It wasn't specifically aimed at her, it was aimed at any board member and any township supervisor could give an access. Is that legal or not? Is the standing question.
So if you look at starting the fourth paragraph, how does Ms. Scheibsnyder or other board members fit within this framework? So if you have information as to that, if they fit within this framework, then they can have access to it. They still have to follow HIPAA regulations.
But she doesn't.
So I don't know what her duties are. So I'm not sure how to do this. If you wanted our legal opinion on it, we would have to have more information about what the board members would be doing. So,
Based on what we read in that letter, and based on how this board has operated over the last 5 years, we as a board aren't involved in those things. Those are departmental issues.
if you as a board are not involved in those activities, then board members should not have access to the HIPAA information.
That's correct.
If you are involved in one or more of those, then it's okay, you don't have to, but it's okay to have access to it, but then you have to follow the HIPAA regulations. That's what the sign off was intended. It wasn't intended to change the reasons, it was intended to give notification as to what your obligations are.
And the way this board has always operated is we have the chief as our officer that runs the department, and we oversee. He brings the budget to us and we go through it. We're not involved in all of those things. Now, I know that, Ms. Scheibsnyder made the comment that she's been there for the last 5 years, but in that other letter that we got from the Sims, they had changed things and there's now more information within that system.
And they
And
audited
they
the
asked
system.
the departments to audit and purge names. So that it wasn't just a fluke. It came to the department as it went to I've talked to other departments, and some had already done the purge, some hadn't done them yet. I mean, every department has their own time frame and speed, I guess. But I just, based on that information, I don't see where we as board members have access or have a need to have access to that. It's my opinion.
Mine too.
And I've talked to other, departments as well, and, I don't know of anybody who's been removed. So, I was,
It's all gonna get, driven based on the responsibilities. So if it slots within that, then it's permissible. If it doesn't slot within those, responsibilities, then it's not permissible.
So I turn your attention to the last bullet of Alex's letter. It says permissible activity is business management and general administrative activities. including those related to implementing complying with privacy rule, other administrative simplification rules, customer service, resolution of internal grievances, sale or transfer of assets, creating de-identified health information, data set, and fundraising for the benefit of the covered entity. It would seem that a board member of Nocfa falls under that particular clause.
All of the things you just read are the chief's job. He just approves the sale and he brings it to us.
That's internal.
I would hold
It's
that Ms. Scheib Snyder or any board member is heavily involved in fundraising.
You can't waive
No.
a HIPAA federal law.
Sure, please, there's time for public comment at the end.
Yeah.
Business management and general administrative activities, including those related to implementing and complying with the privacy and other administrative simplifications, customer service, resolution of internal grievances, sale and transfer of assets, creating de-identified information, a limited data set, and fundraising for the benefit. If you need a wider, more in-depth opinion on that, we can provide it. That's like right out of the HIPAA guidance.
It seems like that would be the hospital,
So
not the NOC board.
when I made my opinion, the former township supervisor, Rose Township, agreed with her. As far as not being involved in, that's up to the chief. And I'm based that on your head.
What?
On your head nod. I'm sorry, on your head nod. I know since this issue's been out here, it's been in the paper. The only calls I've had, or the only people in my office have been, why is this necessary? I don't want you having that information. So that's my opinion. Beyond that, you have your opinion. The only other option you have is if you want them to go deeper into it.
So like I was saying, I watch response time. That's one thing I do watch. I can see when somebody's pulling out from where, and response time is important. That is something we've always tried to improve upon as a department. I do work with DTE day, night, weekend, if there's down wires, things like that. I contact them when I see an issue. They get back with me. We have so many outages in Rose Township, it's ridiculous. It's almost like we're in the beginning of Stone Ages. I mean, one year in the newspaper, I asked for they asked us what it was our wish list for the, I'm sorry, he keeps making faces at me and it's distracting me. I apologize. I'm a little better at keeping my thoughts together, so let me try again. So, one time in the newspaper, they asked us what was our wish list for the township, and I said, I want electricity. And it was, I think, 2020, we want power. We have so many outages. I monitored it for 1 year, and there was only a 2-week period where we did not have an outage somewhere in Rose Township. So I use that for that. I also use it when we have major storms come through here and trees are down and fire is toned out, and they pretty much move the trees off to the side. They cut them up, they push them off to the side. I let the road commission know that there's 10 sites in Rose Township where there's trees in the right of way. Could you please come in and clean it up? It just makes it easier. I mean, I could drive the entire township, I suppose, the next day, but that would probably take, hours. And it's a good tool for me to use, as far as monitoring, response time. I was, can see if the state police are responding or not. That's who we use. So they'll say, MSP en route, MSP not available, things like that. I look at that. Sometimes I make calls based on, that. Why was a trooper not available or things like that. Those are the things I use it for. It's got it almost makes it sound like I can go to some kind of like Rolodex and look up anybody's name and anybody's information, and that's not how it works. So I get different alerts, and that's what I use that for. So, and it's been a good tool for me.
So Diane, you stated your case quite clearly that you want it and you could use it as a tool, and it seems like it makes sense to you, and various hearing and stated cases where you don't think that's true, and the board can get an opinion on that.
Other ways to get the information.
For me right now, the question comes down to, I'm personally in favor of making it accessible to the board. I think it's the right thing to do, if it's legal. And so I would like to make a motion to ask our attorney specifically to determine whether it's legal to have the board have access to this information, given the duties of the board as outlined in our bylaws.
Okay.
I support that. I think that's an excellent idea. I would like to get a legal opinion to really solve this issue one way or the other, and our opinions are irrelevant to this.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe I saw a copy of your bylaws. Have you sent that to our firm?
Aaron has them.
Aaron has them?
Alexander has them also.
Yeah, he has them too, okay. But good enough, because if they have them, then I'll get them.
I have
And
it.
I will likely, refer this to one of our healthcare attorneys, so that we get some real service.
I believe Aaron did that.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah, he definitely, contributed to that letter that you made public, the email from Alex. That was,
Right.
Yeah.
Because I had many conversations back and forth, like he told me he had this healthcare department on it. I thought that final letter
right,
was all that was looked into and investigated and put into that letter.
The difference is I'm asking for a specific reading of board member.
No, I understand.
As defined by the board's duties.
yeah, exactly.
Where this is a more generic look and you've got to meet these tests and everything else, I'm asking the attorneys to perform that test.
It's fine. Based on the duties outlined in the bylaws.
And
Yeah.
that's the only
Then we could
set
do
of
that.
duties we have.
We could do that.
Yeah, can you take a stab at rereading that motion?
Motion is to have a special determination whether it is legal for board members to have access to, I just call it clemens, is that okay to do clemens?
That's
Yeah.
Based on duties defined in the bylaws?
No.
That's,
Did you have support?
Yeah, I support that.
I have another question. So, I did have a pager as well. I was given a pager, 5 years ago that I had in my office, and it no longer works. So is the things that come over the Clemens app different than the things that are being sent over the air? Is there a difference? Is that, there is?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a pager?
I will have to check. The reason that you don't have one now is because we're short on them as it is. We're not buying any new ones because they're getting ready to do the new radio system, and with that will be brand new pagers that don't work like the ones we have now. So I know we're short-handed on pagers. If we do have something, I will ask Matt about it, but we also, what I did for Holly Township is I put a police scanner.
You what?
I put a police scanner.
So if I have a police scanner, I mean, it's gonna make noise all day long though.
No, not, it'll just make noise with our station.
I can put it just on your station.
Yes. And you can hear the information that you need.
And then there's no,
There's no
blood pressure.
There's no
It'll
additional.
still say, you know, females, some age in the address, I'm assuming, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
But it will not give like the intimate stuff that may be, you know, HIPAA.
So there is a difference over what goes over the air and what goes into
Absolutely.
the Columbus report.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't really aware of that, so.
Is there any more discussion on the motion before us?
Yes. Well, the discussion we're going on, you made the motion, but I wanted to just go back. I listened to everything that Ms. Scheib Snyder said she used it for. And all of the things she said she used it for, A, sounds like she'll get it from the scanner. But B, none of that I heard fell within the parameters of what he said. And I think that's important to know going forward.
Right, because he's talking about medicals.
Well, yeah, because that's what Clemens is. So,
Well, no, Clemens's other things too, it actually reports, anytime these guys are called out, anytime they're dispatched, that's their dispatch. So it can be a PI, it can be a medical, it can be trees down, wires down.
So are you willing to do a police scanner so we don't have to, again, pay whatever it's gonna
Yes, I am.
cost?
I am. I'm willing to do a police scanner. I just want to be able to manage the township the way I've done for the last 5 years. It's been very convenient for me to be able to give locations of where things are, and I'm not interested in people's personal
I think we even
information.
have, I think I may have one on the back shelf that we can bring down.
Okay, that would be great.
To buy one, I'll have to look to see if it's still functional, but
so
Okay.
then,
So we have a motion before us.
are you going to rescind it after that?
I am.
Okay.
Does the seconder accept my,
Yes, I do.
okay,
Certainly sounds like a resolution to me.
sounds like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Good work,
Thank you.
board.
So you withdrew your motion?
I withdrew the motion. Moving on to, new business. Item 7A, a letter received from Rose Township resident, Mr. Chester. Ooh.
Just wanted to note for the board, his request was to open the minutes. And, clearly by the Open Meetings Act, section 15.267, number 2, a separate set of minutes shall be taken by the clerk or the designated secretary of the public body at the closed session. These minutes shall be retained by the clerk of the public body, are not available to the public, and shall only be disclosed if required by a civil action filed under section 10, 11, or 13. And that the minutes are destroyed 1 year later. So he's saying that there was a violation. Even if there is, there's still closed session minutes. That action happened. So they need to remain sealed for that year. My opinion.
And I think when George came back into open and he made that motion, it clarified everything we discussed in close. Because we were, realized we needed to, have the attorney present, and dig a little deeper.
So with no further action taken here, we're going to just take Mr. Coop's letter under advisement and move forward. Okay, no further discussion and no motions. Move on to the next item of business. Review of the received attorney's request for proposals. Karen, do you have the lead on this?
Nope, I just did
Oh.
the paperwork.
So these are the 7 responses we got from the attorney firms. Each one did submit a packet with information. I went through every single one of these and read them within a couple of days. And then I just made kind of an at-a-glance sheet that I submitted with the proposals, just breaking it into the names of the firms, where they're out of their location, hourly rate fees, if there's a retainer contract fee option included, which only 1 out of the 7 submitted, whether they had any municipal experience and whether they had any employment labor experience, and any notes. So that's where.
I think I need to disclose, I wasn't aware, or I hadn't thought about it at the time. When we Holly Township, got new council. We left one of our, issues with Holly Hills with the Foster Swift. And it was Sarah Gabbis that is our attorney, and she's the one that did to Nocfa as well.
Okay. And we kind of agreed in here not to use anybody that the townships had relationships with.
Yeah, I don't think the firm's a problem, it's the person that bid.
Just my 2 cents to the board, and obviously we're going to discuss this. My suggestion is we take 2 or 3 out of this to do a formal interview with, based on, again, my opinion only. I was looking at, well, what Ms. Winchester just discussed and kind of crossed Foster Swift off the list. I also took into consideration the location and the size of some of these other firms that submitted, not necessarily based on price, but there is a couple that are, $60,000 contract annual retainer fee. I broke mine down to 3 different firms, one of which is the current Mr. Buck is from Bodmin. However, I think we all as a board have enough knowledge, because we've been using them for a few months, that I don't know that we would need to do a formal interview with them. But my other 2 choices were the McGraw, Morris, and Weingart, Haley, Linden, and Block.
And so the 60,000 retainer kind of takes that one off the list.
That kind of threw me off, so
Okay. And it seems like number 5 would be taken off the list because of no labor employment experience.
correct, based on the profile that they wrote and sent. I did not see, in fact, I believe there was some discussion, or there was a sentence in there that said that they didn't have labor employment, that they're more strictly municipal.
And so you have Bozeman, McGraw, and Weingarten. What was your thinking around number 2?
McGraw, the price?
Number
Baby
2.
Schultz.
Baby.
Oh, because they're out of Okemos.
Oh, okay.
And what was the reason for 7? Looking at the price, did they have, because they were close?
No charge for travel.
So, although their hourly rate is on the mid to higher end, they are local. Actually, the associate that is interested in representing is from Rose Township. She has a wide array of municipal and labor experience according to their submittal. She's worked with similar size municipalities, Benton Township, Bio. They just seemed, as far as, I wasn't necessarily considering the price with this, but the fit of their firm with us being a smaller, rural type.
Their price is actually in line with Bolton.
Yeah, well, and I was also going to suggest that maybe in one of our questions in the whole interview with them is, I know some of these firms did show a discounted rate for municipal. They did not, and I don't know if that's an option or not, but it's definitely a question we can ask. Negotiate price, and also how do they charge? That's a big factor. One of the firms did exclusively say that they charge in 0.6 of an hour. So if it's a 2-minute phone call, a lot of firms will charge that's an hour. Whereas others will disseminate it down to, okay, well, that was a 10-minute call, so it's a 10-minute charge. Again, these are just things that I've come up with as opinions.
Well, I would like to move that we invite in the 3 candidates, including Goldman,
Okay.
For interviews at our next board meeting.
Well, which ones are they again?
What's on this right now is Boatman, McGraw-Morris, and Weingarten, Haley, Lindholm, and somebody.
And what about Fahey here? I know they're in Okemos, which isn't, it's just down 69, because I go to Okemos quite a bit. It's not that far. I'd like to talk to them. Maybe just have 4 instead of 3.
I agree with Mr. Hampton. I've had a lot of interaction with Fahey Schultz. They're proactive, they're on top of a lot of things.
I mean, normally I'm a person of 3, but I'd like to make it 4 this time.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion to include those 4.
And I
And
would-
invite them
One,
in
two,
numbers
six,
1,
and seven.
2, 6, and 7 on the list.
Would
Pat doesn't have.
would you like me to orchestrate that? So by contacting them and letting them know we would like to meet with them and
Well, let's vote on the motion first, but
So I would support.
any further discussion? Okay. Can I have a roll call, please?
Stouffer,
Yes?
Winchester,
Yes.
Gamka,
Yeah.
Judge Snyder,
Yes.
Pollock.
Yes, please do.
And this is going to be done during a meeting in the public then, or?
It has to be.
Okay, I just
It should
asked.
be.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I will send out invites to those 4 listed for the next board meeting, and we will set aside time on the agenda to do that. Is there a set of questions that we want to come up with prior to that, so everybody is asked the same?
Not a bad
Or
idea.
are we just going to wing it?
I mean, I usually come with a set of questions, but I guess if somebody asks my question, I won't.
Why don't we put down our questions and send them all to the secretary? Let her read out what we have that are duplicates. And then send it back to us and we can do a second edit. And then the only other thing I'd like to say is when you do get in the middle of the interview, I've done this before, you start to ask these questions. Often the interviewee will give you an answer that then creates more questions. But if we have a base 6, 8, or 10 questions so that everybody's on the same field, I think that's a good thing. That works perfect.
We're picturing half an hour each. 15 minutes each, what do we?
I was gonna say,
Target.
interviewees are interesting. Someone will give you 2-word answers, and other will contact me. So
Mr. Falk, what's your experience? You've been interviewed by municipalities like this?
A couple times.
Okay.
And was it a standard questionnaire with
Pretty much,
half-hour
yeah.
time frame is
Yeah.
allowable? Is that?
Yeah, that fits with what my experience has been.
I was gonna say that.
Do you have a list of questions?
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to offer the suggestion, why don't we have a special meeting and that's all we do is if we have 4 people, even 15 minutes that's an hour and some are gonna go longer. I would suggest that we just have 1 meeting, that's all we do with this.
I like that. And could we give it under the circumstance, I'm gonna be on vacation till the 3rd. So it's kind of tight.
Well, I think we're
We can
gonna do it in
after.
January.
Right, more towards the end, but to give us time to come up with questions and for me to do any work.
Okay, I'll coordinate to set up a special meeting, here, do the next board meeting, come up with a date sheet for inviting the.
You do it after. then?
So the board meeting for January is the 18th. That will give us literally 2 weeks after the first of the year. That might be kind of tight to
That's
get.
what I was thinking,
We want to do it
after.
sometime after and then do our reconciling as a board at the February meeting. It just, with the holidays ending and I don't know that it's gonna be enough time to fit everything in.
If we could move it out 2 weeks from the January meeting to the 18th.
You want the special meeting, you want to move out 2 weeks from the January 18th?
Yeah.
So that would put us The first week of February?
Yeah.
Okay. First week of February, and then our board meeting, because our board meeting actually comes early in February. Because Tuesday is the first day of the month, so it's our actual scheduled board meeting is the 15th of February.
What day are we talking, first week of February?
If you go in the first week of February, you're either going the 31st of January or the first, second, or third. Correct?
Of February.
Mhm.
Yes.
We can take this offline. We're gonna set up a special meeting. And we'll pick a day, make sure everyone's available, and move on from there. That's it for new business. Time for public comment. All right, public comment. Now it's time to clear your thoughts. Ask you to limit your time to 3 minutes. And give us some feedback. Mr. Cooper.
Yes. The first is in
Name, address, and name, township.
Though not required under the open. My first question was about your discussion or lack of discussion of basic content of my letter. My letter to the board was to reflect that you violated the Open Meeting Act by having a closed meeting on a matter that was not. And while I agree with the definite or the statement that Karen made regarding what you can do with things in minutes and open meetings, the fact that that was an illegal meeting, I don't think that you have a protection of that. And if it was an illegal meeting, I don't know why you can't open it, because even though it was quote unquote a closed meeting, you should be able to release that. But I thought maybe your attorney here would address that, but that's fine. The other thing has to do with, and it seemed hopefully getting resolved, but this whole business about sanctioning and it's going on every place, but specifically Karen. I went back with something that the chairman said today that kind of got me thinking, was this necessary for the board to address this, or was this a personal complaint? On one hand, he comes and files a complaint with the post office, and he does this in his name, and he files one where he was supposed to. But when he's been asked in public settings, what's the complaint of? His response tonight was, I don't think I have to give that out. So it's really an issue of transparency. If this is a matter to be dealt with by the fire board, they should have that information. If it's a personal matter, and he was handling it as an individual, then I would agree, he probably doesn't have to give that information out. But then the question is, why did it come here? So this is what I was talking about last month. You guys are really having fun of it. And it's not right. It's very dysfunctional. And there's things that are driving these actions. Seem to be more on personal stuff than it does on the fire department. So hopefully you can get over that and spend money for attorneys for this and not dropping it, and which maybe it never should have come here in the first place. So try to get back to focusing on what you're there. You are not an administrative board. That's what that means for. You are a policy and an oversight, generally speaking. And there's been things that are being done by this board as a group or individually that is which is his responsibility. And when you get policy boards mixed up with day-to-day operations, this is what you get. Thank you. Yes.
And folks, saying you go to real cool, Rose Township. It wasn't, I didn't have a comment Mr. Cook spoke, but I will speak now. Part of the dysfunction is a management, Jeremy, allowing other stuff to go to the newspaper. I'm talking at the TC Capital. Well, I know he's friends with Sharon Stone, but all of this goes out there, which then in turn causes us to get letters that are anonymous letters with bad information in it. My name was on that letter before it was redacted. It was distributed with my name in there with false information, saying that I was fired from Nocfa. I was not. We all know I was not. That caused a citizen that's considered to be a little unstable at a township meeting to say publicly that I was fired from Nocfa. That's slanderous information. So part of the problem I think we have with the board is, again, I'm picking on Jeremy because he happens to be the chief, but this stuff, he needs better control of his internal information and what gets released. What does some of this stuff get out there and it ends up in the paper? That's my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. I was waiting to see if anybody.
I've got something.
Yeah. Next,
Okay,
after
thank
you
you.
can.
So I have a letter, let me pass this both directions. This came from a resident. You'll see the first paragraph. She says, I asked Supervisor Klaus to read this into the minutes as I am unable to attend tonight's meeting due to a previous engagement. And when she brought me this letter, I did inform her that the meeting started at 3:30 because she said tonight, she understood that, but she didn't know that she was going to be talking. So, I've been a resident of the village of Nutley for approximately 8 years now. I depend first on the village's fire department in the event of an emergency, but I know that Nocfa is the backup for emergency situations, and I pay taxes to support this organization and the fulfillment of its mission. As a dual taxpayer, I have utilized the services of the clerk of Winchester when I have needed paperwork notarized, a FOIA request completed, documentation regarding Oak Hill Cemetery project I'm working on with the Holly Historical Society. I've always found her to be extremely knowledgeable, personable, professional. Additionally, Karen has held the elected position as clerk for the past 22 years, and the community has demonstrated their faith in her abilities by consistently re-electing her every 4 years. It is my understanding that a letter was received into the township offices, which Ms. Winchester opened and forwarded onto the board based on the law, which has already been provided to this board, along with the established practice of receiving mail at the township office. Her actions were well within reason and are part of her regular duties as clerk. It is not and was not a federal offense or embezzlement for personal property. The letter was sent to the township offices, not your personal residence. You have no reasonable expectation that the mail would only be opened by you. It was at best, oh, this is clerical error. It was at best an honest mistake. As a resident and a taxpayer, I'm perplexed by the amount of energy and funding being expended to resolve this unnecessarily squabbling among the Nocfa board members. You are doing a great disservice to both Holly and Rose Township residents. Your responsibility as a board is to oversee the business transactions and execute contracts necessary to fulfill the mission of the organization. The level of hostility that has been created amongst the board members makes it impossible to accomplish anything for the good of the communities of Holly and Rose Township. I am retired, I live on a fixed income, and I keep tabs on every dollar I spend, including my tax dollars. I am regularly engaged in the municipal process and attend multiple board meetings monthly to stay abreast of how that money is spent and what decisions are being made that could impact my finances in the future. I appreciate that these meetings are available on YouTube, and I feel embarrassed for you and the actions you have taken that are now publicly available. I am not naive. My letter probably won't make a difference, and it likely won't change your mind or behavior. Nonetheless, I am respectfully requesting that the censure of Karen Winchester be vacated, and instead of spending additional time and resources toward this matter, you move on to the duties that the community is counting on you to fulfill. You have spent more time worrying about who opened the letter instead of what that envelope contains. The citizens and the staff this board oversees deserve better. Respectfully submitted, Roberta Pashota, 213 Michigan Street, Holly, Michigan, 48442. I will tell you, in the earlier part of this, she says, I pay taxes, and I mentioned to her that she was not a part of this ad for Nocfa, but she was quick to remind me that we took money from the general fund to make up the difference for the budget. So that was where she came from. And did you get a copy of that? I sent it so it can be added to the record. Thank you.
Then I've been requested to read into the record as well from somebody that was unable to make the meeting. And I apologize, but I didn't make copies, but I'll send them to you, and I'll give mine to Pat. Dear Nocfa board members, and this is dated December 21st. I'm writing this letter to you to express concern related to recent actions by Nocfa board chair Peter Stauffer. In recent months, Mr. Stauffer has acted in a manner that demonstrates his lack of depth and understanding of the role and responsibilities of a Nocfa board member and his role as chair. Mr. Stauffer has stood before the board and the public and made false accusations and claims against another board member. He has bullied private citizens during comment periods and held inappropriate closed session meetings that violate the Open Meetings Act. As a direct result of his behavior, he has not acted in the best interest of Nocfa, and his actions have diminished public trust in the board and the ability of the board to administer its responsibilities. For the following reasons, I request that the board consider the removal of Peter Stauffer from the Nocfa board for fraud subject to the terms of Article 8, governing board of the Articles of Incorporation. 1, Peter Stauffer continues to require constant legal support and accrues legal fees for even the most elementary questions. For example, whether a non-voting member has the right to make a motion. He has demonstrated that he has no understanding of the North Oakland County Fire Authority Articles of Incorporation, whether caused by lack of interest or ability to learn the framework under which he is bound in his role on the board. His ignorance and desire to keep the chief of Nocfa from making a motion, in effect, attempt to silence the single most important voice of the Nocfa and board. Peter Stauffer has created division and toxicity between board members and with Nocfa and its personnel. Peter Stauffer has attempted to remove residents from the meeting for commenting, to intimidate and create a chilling effect in the public or on the public, demonstrating his lack of basic understanding of the rules set forth under the Michigan Open Meetings Act 267 of 1976, OMA, Section 15.263. Number 4, Peter Stauffer presided over the November 19th, 2021 meeting where the board went into closed session to discuss a legal opinion that does not qualify as a permitted exception, thus violating OMA. Number 5, Peter Stauffer at the September 27th meeting made allegations of federal crime and potential state crimes by Karen Winchester. The accusations were made in a public forum to inflict reputational harm upon Ms. Winchester. To assess the irreparable harm caused by Mr. Stauffer, as an example, one must only perform an internet search on the key terms Karen Winchester and censure to see that the search results available relate to the false accusations that are now irretrievable in the public domain. 6, Peter Stauffer at the September 27th meeting knowingly made false statements to the public that false criminal allegations above were the subject of a federal United States postal investigation. There's no such record of any investigation, whether from the U.S. Postal Inspector, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, or the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Michigan. 7, Peter Stauffer has indicated in public meetings that he is not responsible for his actions of September 27, 2021, or responsible to vote on the motion to revoke the censure of Ms. Winchester because he is an unelected official. While he is unelected, he is serving on a public board and his responsibility cannot be withdrawn on a whim, particularly since he has taken the affirmative steps in furtherance of his public duty by assuming the leadership position of chair. 8, furthermore, because Peter Stauffer was unwilling to vote related to the motion to revoke the censure, therefore not fulfilling his duties as chair, he continues to cause potential legal action against the board and yet undetermined additional legal fees to be paid by Nocfa. Nocfa's emergency, fire, and rescue services are the most important services provided to the public. There is no room for ineffective leadership, abuse of power and process, waste of taxpayer funds, avoidable litigation, unnecessary legal fees, and wasted time and resources. Mr. Stauffer has demonstrated his failure to serve the public and properly conduct the board administrative duties. For the foregoing reasons and in anticipation of continued lack of good faith without evidence to the contrary, Peter Stauffer has not acted in the best interest of Nocfa and he should be removed from the board for cause immediately. Sincerely, Julius Stern, resident, Rose Township.
Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, adjourn the meeting at 5:35.